Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the satellite way out to the west, here's the next storm that's going to be pushing into the western Aleutians, actually right now, late this afternoon. The main low center staying back toward Kamchatka Peninsula, but could push some gale force winds into the western Aleutians later on tonight, and then that front will be gradually shifting eastward tomorrow night and into Sunday. On the imagery here over the southeast coast, a couple of waves moving northward. This one bringing some gale force winds into the southern areas, Clarence Strait, back across Prince of Wales Island through tonight, and some pretty good rainfall amounts as well, over an inch falling over the southern locations. Metlakatla picking up about 1.33 inches in the last 24 hours. Ketchikan a little over 1.5 inches, and Annette picking up 1 3/4 inches with this system here. But back to the northwest, those rainfall amounts drop off quite rapidly, and it was a pretty nice day up here with offshore flow, northeast breezes, and lots of sunshine. Yakutat back over to Cordova, into Prince William Sound, as you can see in the Copper River Basin. A lot of sunshine in the Susitna Valley today, and also up there in the interior. Back to the west still, north to south flow, bringing the chilly air down from the Arctic there. Easterlies, east-northeasterlies along the Arctic coast, and then that taking a turn to the south with lots of clouds and snow showers, gusty winds, 15 to 35 miles an hour in gusts there through the Bering Strait, across St. Lawrence Island, and on down across the Pribilof. St. George had a wind gust at least to 40 miles per hour this afternoon, and then that continues on down across the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula with pretty gusty winds there and rain and snow showers. A break here out over the central Aleutians. You can see quite a bit of clearing, and then the cloud shield with that next front pushing into the southwest interior. On the chart today, here's the low center earlier, about midday, pulling northward here and bringing the wind and rain with it into the southern areas, and a couple of weak bands or weakening bands had shower activity here from the Gulf of Alaska. Pretty gusty winds, 15 to 30 miles an hour along the North Gulf Coast earlier, but some areas of rain and showers mostly into the southern Kenai Peninsula, and then back to the northwest in the colder air. It became a little more mixed with snow at times, and then the colder air, light snow showers, especially in this area right here, and then back up to the northwest, and quite a widespread area of cloudiness with light snow and flurries along the Arctic coast there. And those winds 10 to 20, gusts 25 up in that area, and that'll hold through tomorrow, and then it looks like it'll increase tomorrow night and Sunday, become a little stronger there with small craft advisories just about everywhere up in that location. Over the Bering Sea, a lot of snow showers moving southward there. Of course, rain and snow showers here where temperatures reach the upper 30s and lower 40s over the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. King Cove had northerly wind gusts at least to 50 miles an hour this afternoon or earlier today. And for tonight, those winds will continue here across that area, as well as back to the north across the eastern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait. No change for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and pretty nice dry conditions. Light winds over the central and eastern interior. Just variably cloudy here in the east. Still a risk of some really flurry type precipitation along the Alaska Range and maybe up in this area, but just weakening bands of clouds coming northeast or northwestward here along the coast and then dissipating. Looks like most of the moisture will stay east of Kodiak Island both tonight and tomorrow. But we have the one front moving through tonight here and then dissipating with leftover rain. That'll be spreading up toward the northern areas later tonight and into tomorrow. Here's the next system here, which will bring more gale force winds as it rotates northward off the coast. So that'll bring the gales back in after they drop off tonight here over the southern southeast coast, and could have some gales along the central coast as well, and then back into Clarence Thomas with the rain heavy at times. And that precipitation again will be moving northward throughout the day and toward the evening. Back to the west, just some isolated showers along the North Gulf Coast. Some of that moisture shearing off the main low pressure area down here to the southeast. That may just clip the east side of Kodiak Island, but off to the west, Bristol Bay, mostly sunny tomorrow, north to south flow, keeping it mostly clear right out through most of the bay, but that'll pick up moisture here and keep it backed up along the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Again, in the form of rain or snow at times, but pretty light there. Back up now east of the Pribilofs mostly, and on up to the Bering Strait again. And the Arctic coast, pretty breezy. Areas of 15 to 25 knot winds there for the marine areas. Back to the north, this front driving eastward there will spread some rain and probably small craft advisory winds in towards mostly Adak, with light winds for Atka tomorrow and diminishing winds over the eastern Aleutians, as well as snow shower activity ending. For the outlook for Sunday, the first one that comes up tomorrow pulls back to the west. That'll bring a chance of rain into the North Gulf Coast. Best chance will be along the North Gulf Coast, and lesser chances inland. Maybe some isolated rain and snow showers over the Copper River Basin near the mountains, but this next one will pull northward. Look for a return of minimum gales possible, not quite as widespread as the one tomorrow. That'd be mainly along the south coast. Small craft advisories in over the southern inside waters. Lighter winds to the north and a chance of showers. The main rain area staying down in the south. Chance of showers up to the north. Northwest winds could be just a sunny day there for Kodiak Island on Sunday, with still some moisture here left over Bristol Bay, but again, that'll be south of the coast there and then wrapping back up along and to the west of the southwest coast. So it looks pretty good over the interior. Could be some scattered snow showers over the southwest or the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, right on down to the Alaska Range and western Alaska Range in this area, but pretty sunny conditions over the interior. Definitely dry, risk of a snow shower over the upper Yukon Valley. And then that gradient tightening up there along the eastern Arctic coast. So you could see possibly minimum gale force winds, especially in the gusts, Sunday afternoon there along the eastern Arctic coast. And that'll extend at least to 25 knots from Barrow on down to about Point Hope. It looks like lighter winds for the Kotzebue Sound area. Mostly sunny skies for the Seward Peninsula, Nome, Kotzebue, Ambler, all looking really good on Sunday with mostly fair conditions. And this front slipping just to the south of the eastern Aleutians as it looks right now. And so rain will be spreading in, a little iffy on the wind forecast right now, but nothing too terribly strong. More likely, though, rain will be sliding into the east side there and then breaking out the showers with westerly winds, 20 to 25 knots all along the Aleutians for Sunday. Temperatures this afternoon along the southeast coast range from the upper 40s to lower 50s, with 53 at Sitka, 54 at Skagway, and a 50 down at Klawock. Otherwise, Wrangell had 45, Yakutat, sunshine, 52 degrees, 54 in Cordova with sunshine as well. Nice 49 in Valdez, some gusty northeast winds there, 28 up at Gulkana in the Copper River Basin, and the Tanana Valley, upper 20s or mid 20s, that's Northway at 26, Delta and Fairbanks at 31. A little milder to the west with Tanana reaching 34 degrees and 30, both at Fort Yukon and Bettles. 12 was all they could push up to this afternoon at Anatuvik Pass. 27 though at Arctic Village. Mostly in the 20s along the Arctic coast. Cape Lismore up to 30. 32 at Shishmaref and mid to upper 20s for the Selawik Valley, Kotzebue, and those locations, but just edging above 32 at Nome, 34 Savunga, and mostly in the upper 20s, lower 30s here over the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta. A little milder back toward the Kuskokwim Valley with 36 at Sleepmute, mid 40s South Central Alaska, and again Talkeetna 52 with sunshine, mid to upper 40s Kodiak Island. Cooler here over the Alaska Peninsula, but King Salmon up to 46, 41 on Alaska, mid 40s for Adak and Atka with some sunshine. And for the Lows tonight, teens for the North Slope and Arctic coast, down into the 0 to 5 degree range, or 0 to 10 degree range here over the Brooks Range, and then back into the teens, right on down to the Alaska Range. South of the mountains, lower to upper 30s or in the 30s, and 40s for the southeast coast to near 50 over the southern areas, and back to the southwest, upper 20s, lower 30s from Bristol Bay, but well above freezing out over the Pribilofs and the Aleutians. Looking at the highs for tomorrow, lower 20s again, not really much change for the Arctic coast, North Slope, or the Brooks Range. Upper 20s to mid 30s here over the interior, 40s to the south, and looks like that temperature pattern will extend right down across the Alaska Peninsula, and Shimia pushing up toward 50, but the warmest location will be over the southern southeast coast with lower to mid 50s. Flying weather, again, more IFR spreading into the southern areas tomorrow afternoon, and then this area lifting northward and dissipating, so conditions will be improving during the morning hours and the afternoon, with the break here right through the central areas, and then this stuff right along and off the coast could again just end up pushing onto the east side of Kodiak Island, but I think it'll mostly stay off to the west. Areas IFR still lingering on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and then marginal VFR to the north through the Bering Strait, and areas of IFR along mostly the central and eastern Arctic coast. VFR with ridging here ahead of the next front, pushing eastward. For the passes, Anatuva occasionally marginal tomorrow, especially on the northern approach, and same thing for Adigan, lowest conditions of northern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR. And for the Lake Clark, could be possibly some areas of marginal VFR, mainly on the western entrance of this pass. Merrill, though, and Lake Clark as well, mostly VFR. Rainy looks good tomorrow. Windy VFR. Isabel, same forecast from Antasta as well. Tanita VFR, either entrance and for portage, VFR, and then possibly this east side here could become marginal in the afternoon, depending on how much moisture gets this far north and slips on up to the west-northwest out of the Gulf. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR to start with, and then improving tomorrow late in the morning into the afternoon. And for the freezing levels here, late tonight, early tomorrow at the surface down along the southwest coast here, then back up something like this, 2,000 feet, possibly as far north as the eastern Alaska Range, and of course the southern panhandle about 4,000 feet warmer. And out to the west, cold air aloft here with the trough and the northerly flow over the eastern Bering Sea, and then that next front nudging some warmer air into the western Aleutians and western Bering. For the icing threats, along with that will be possibly some moderate rime icing, but that'll be in a narrow band there along the front, mostly above 7,000 feet. Pretty isolated hit and miss stuff here, more miss than hit, mainly in those snow showers here along the Alaska Peninsula, maybe through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, but really not that significant. And then more widespread area pushing into the southern southeast coast. And the winds aloft showing the jet here just mainly to the south of the Aleutians, 80 knots coming across the eastern Aleutians there, and then down to the south, taking a turn to the northeast, and then fanning out here as it reaches the coastline, with one branch coming up along the southern southeast coast at about 60 knots. And that's going to be carrying a couple of more waves after the one moves through tonight, another one Saturday, and yet another one on Sunday. For the 9,000 foot winds, 20 knots over the northern panhandle, 65 knots here coming across Dixon Entrance, and then lighter back out to the west. And these winds curving back around will be mostly south of the North Gulf Coast, definitely east of Kodiak Island there with that low over southern Shelikof Strait. Another low up here over Norton Sound, making for pretty light variable winds here over much of the west-southwest interior. Light easterlies over the Tanana Valley, White Mountain areas, and easterlies at about 10 to 15. Northwest, 35. Pribilofs down across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. This whole pattern gradually shifting eastward as these stronger southwesterlies come in to the west there. And at 3,000 feet, high pressure, light wind, central Aleutians tomorrow. Winds increasing and pushing eastward there over the Aleutians, and 25 to as high as 35 knot winds at 3,000 feet tomorrow. Markedly lighter toward Kodiak Island. Northeast about 5 to 10 over the southeast interior, and still a narrow band of 20 to 25 knotters there into the central interior. And then taking a turn to the south, and again pretty strong winds at 3,000 feet coming into the southern southeast coast, Prince of Wales Island, and those areas there as high as 65 knots, but then lighter up to the north, only 5 to 10. So look for turbulence to move back in after leaving tonight and improving late tonight and early tomorrow. We'll come back in with the next system and spread northward. Looks pretty smooth from the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, some areas of light to isolated moderate below 4,000 feet up there in the interior, and then areas of moderate chop from the central Arctic coast all the way down in those north to northwest winds here across the Alaska Peninsula. And after the break, I'll be back to look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening we're welcoming back Doug Marshall. Doug is currently a professor at the University of New Mexico State University, and he is, in my estimation, one of the foremost aviation legal experts in the country. It's really great to have him on the program.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks for inviting me back.
Welcome back. And I want to show you, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, this is a book that Doug was one of the authors on, and in fact, I'm teaching a course at UAA on unmanned aircraft, and we're using this as a textbook, so it's nice to have the author on the show. Doug, last week we talked about some of the uses for UAS and why you have such passion for what's happening in the future, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that you hear about. Can you talk about the model aircraft exception or exemption or the way it's treated differently?
Well, it's been the model aircraft community and the technology that is represented by model aircraft has been controversial for a number of years now because folks that want to use these type of airplanes or aircraft for commercial purposes have been told by the FAA essentially that you can't do it, that the regulations don't permit the use of RC aircraft or models for any commercial purpose. Congress kind of took care of that problem by specifically excluding model aircraft from legislation that was passed about 2.5 years ago. So now the modeling community is free to do what they want kind of under the old guidelines, but without any regulatory oversight from the FAA.
So one of the things I think is important is that the audience who might go down and get a hobby store model aircraft, a quadcopter or something, there are ways they can legally fly those. But I think it's very important from a safety standpoint that they understand where they can fly it and where they can't fly it. We had a recent instance out was last summer where somebody was flying a quadcopter in Class D airspace out at Lake Hood. And that's dangerous and a safety issue all the way around. But what you're saying is people can fly model aircraft, but that can't be part of a commercial venture?
That's correct. They can fly for pure recreational purposes, just for fun. They can't charge for it. They can't be paid by somebody else to do that. And the reason for that is the federal aviation regulations are safety oriented. I mean, that's why they're in place, is for safety. And as the intent or the use of an airplane goes up in the sense of the number of people that may be involved or impacted by their operation, such as a commercial operation or an airliner, the safety requirements go higher. You know, the safety requirements for Boeing 747, both for design and production and manufacture, and the flying of the thing, are higher than they are for a general aviation aircraft for obvious reasons, because there's more risk.
I want to talk about one more thing. You really did a nice job last week talking about the benefits that can be gained from using UAS. But our audience are pilots and mechanics and aviation people around the state. Do we assume an additional risk if we're starting to use UASs? And I don't mean model aircraft in this case, but regulated UASs. Is there an additional risk?
A risk of operating
mid-air collision?
Well, there shouldn't be if they're operated properly and if they obey the rules. Coordinate their activities with air traffic control, with the other operators or the users of the airspace. I mean, it's another object that's in the sky, so obviously there's a risk there, but it shouldn't be enhanced if the operation is done according to the rules, the regulations, and the standards, and everybody who's in the airspace knows who's there and what time they're going to be there or what the operation is going to be about.
And if it is an approved operation, the audience doesn't really need to know the details, but there is a process where it is approved by the FAA and there's a risk assessment done. And when they fly, they publish NOTAMs.
They do.
So
they give notice to the public, and for the general aviation community that may be listening to this or watching the program, checking the NOTAMs and understanding when these activities or these operations are going to be in place or are being flown is the best way to assure that you don't run into one. It's, you know, we can all share the airspace if it's done and it's managed properly.
Doug, you've been around this business for a long time.
Right.
We've got about a minute left. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think this technology is extremely exciting. It's going to be a lifesaver in many respects because they perform functions that can be done safer than manned aviation. They're not going to supplant or substitute for most manned operations. And they can be a benefit to all of us, but through science and through search and rescue operations, for monitoring the environment, for looking at ice jams on the rivers. We heard a presentation on that the other day. There's just 1,000 different uses that are just really, really exciting.
Doug, thanks for being on the program, and thanks for the work you do in this field.
Oh, thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. We're going to continue to have more programs the next couple of weeks on unmanned aircraft or drones. I hope you'll tune in. This is an important thing that we need to approach together. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to keep in mind the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation is member supported. If you haven't joined for 2014, please do. You can go to our website. It's on the screen there, aasfonline.org, and renew for 2014, and pretty soon we'll be sending out our membership letters for 2015. With that, you can support programs like this, and we can all fly safer together. Until next week, fly safe.
Welcome back. We'll look for gales tonight here along the southeast coast, or this evening, especially as that first system moves northward. Then it'll drop off late tonight and early tomorrow, then come back up tomorrow afternoon, depending on the exact timing of the next storm, but definitely coming back up. Small craft advisories in over the southern waters, and easterlies at about 25 along the central coast here, lighter up to the north. And for Sunday, another one comes in, but not quite as strong as the one tomorrow, so possibly some gales back along the south coast here, maybe some small craft advisories over the southern inside waters there, Clarence Strait and Dixon Entrance. Otherwise, northeasterlies 20 to 25 through the central areas, north 10 to 20 Lincoln Island Glacier Bay, and easterlies at about 15 to 20, maybe some higher gusts here on the north coast. For Prince William Sound, winds basically northeast 10, but still pretty gusty in areas there coming out of the northern bays. And easterlies 20 knots, give or take there for the North Gulf Coast, more northeasterly here for the western part of that coastline, and then north here on the east side of Kodiak Island. Pretty light for Shelikof Strait, northwest 15 for the Barren Islands, and variable to north for Cook Inlet at about 10 knots. And not much change here for the inlet on Sunday. It may pick up a little bit. Northwest 20 to 25 here, Augustine Island down southeast across the Barrens, and then northerlies at about 20 Kodiak Island, but higher gusts down toward Sitkinak, sustained 25 to 30 knots back down toward that area. Northwest 15 for Shelikof Strait, easterlies possibly coming up to 25 knots Sunday for the North Gulf Coast, northeast at about 15 and gusty for Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay north 15, small craft advisories here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Gales, at least to start with here on the southern side, and north 20, Sitkinak over to Chignik or Sand Point. And then on Sunday here, the ridge moves in, so pretty light and variable winds, especially across the peninsula here, down to 10 to 15 knots. Bristol Bay holding northwest 15, and then small craft advisories redevelop here southwest of Kodiak Island early on and then diminish during the afternoon. For the eastern Aleutians, tomorrow those northwesterlies slowly diminishing, still small craft advisories, especially on the eastern island there, and light westerlies with high pressure swinging through the central Aleutians, becoming south at about 15 in the late afternoon for AKwx, and then a little bit of an increase with the small craft advisories just back to the west. And then looks like 25 knot winds here from the west, Shimia in across toward AKwx, And then kind of a variable direction of that one low center moving possibly just to the south of the Fox Islands, so north to northeast, 15 to 20 knots. And along the southwest coast there, south of Nunivak Island, northwesterlies 25 knots. Small craft advisories though on up to St. Lawrence Island, where there'll be freezing spray in that zone, 25 knot winds. Also for St. Matthew Island, and northwest 20 for the Pribilofs. For the Arctic, or for Sunday here, no change. Bearing straight down across St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories north of Nunivak Island, but dropping off 15 knots from the northwest on down to the south. Pretty light winds for the Pribilofs. Up along the Arctic coast, there we go. Northeast 20, maybe some higher gusts there from the central coast here all the way over to Demarcation Point, with freezing and heavy freezing spray occurring just about all areas. And small craft advisories here for the west side, north 25 for the Chukchi Sea down to the Bering Strait. And then for Sunday, looks like this, an increase in the winds, except for this zone here where they'll probably drop off a little bit and maybe even down to 15 knots here over the eastern portion of that zone. But small craft advisories, northeasterlies 25 to 30 knots, and then east-northeast at about 30 knots with maybe some higher gusts, probably some higher gusts there on the east side. For tonight, system moves through with the gale force winds, but that'll diminish later this evening and become a little more showery with some scattered rain showers up along the North Gulf Coast, pretty fair over the interior. And this next system rolls up tomorrow for more gale force winds and rain heavy at times, especially over the central and southern areas, moving north. Pretty nice day over the remainder of the state, no change over the Bering Sea and the North Slope. This front brings some rain into the eastern Aleutians on Sunday. Have a great weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.